I started to realize in myself that I was like, what am I doing with my life? Back then I made a bunch of when I was a kid, I made a bunch of mistakes, things that I know hurt some people, and some people like I'm still in connection with till this day with some of those people. So knowing that I did something that hurt these people was starting to hurt myself at one point, because like I started to get the awareness of how shitty I was, what a shitty person I used to be, and and yeah, and when I started to learn about myself, learn kind of what I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, and I started to get out of that hole. At first I had that awareness, and I even at one point almost I was kind of starting to feel like I was going to get into depression because of in my journey when I started to grow. At first I had the awareness, but not necessarily the tactics or techniques or tools of how to get out of feeling shitty. Like I had the awareness to feel shitty, but not enough knowledge to how to get out. And so that kind of was starting to make me feel depressed, because I was like, dude, you were so shitty. Like, what kind of person were you being? Look at what you did to these people. Look at how you were, all that stuff. And I didn't know how to get out. And eventually, like, I started to continue to just consume a bunch of information on YouTube. At first, I started with motivational speakers, and that kind of from there, YouTube, obviously, the algorithm starts to recommend a bunch of other shit. And so then I just started going to the recommendations after motivational stuff. It would recommend something about the mind or something about how to make money sometimes, or and like that. And it started to snowball, and I started to realize that like I started to unlock certain things in myself, and a lot of that came from up here. And so that's when I started to be like, oh, like there's a whole other thing to this experience. There's a whole component that I'm missing, and that was the mind. And so then I started to focus so much on my own mind, and started to see, it's like when you start pouring water in a flower and it starts to flourish. That's what I started to see in my life.
Yeah. I mean, that's really beautiful to hear because I've been through something very similar in my own life. And it's only recently, I would say, in the last 4 to 5 years that I've really tried to grasp this whole idea, as you say, of kind of delving deep and asking those important questions and trying to figure out what is it that we are and what is it
Hmm.
that we want to try and um,
Right.
what is it that we try want to try and get to through this journey that we call life, right? And similar to yourself, I've let a few people down in my life. I've regretted a lot of things, and at the time, as you can maybe appreciate, you do feel really shit,
Yeah.
especially when you when you're causing harm to other people, not necessarily in a violent or physical way, but in emotional sense.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so it's taken me quite a few years to actually get over that and to even begin to forgive myself.
Hmm.
So it'd be interesting to hear your views on forgiving oneself. How did you deal with that process of getting past what you did and ultimately forgiving whatever you did in the past?
Forgiving what I did in the past. um Well, for one, it's the understanding that like life continues moving forward, right? Life is always constantly moving forward. The second that you start to fall behind with who you used to be, you're starting to fall behind in life as a whole. You're not moving along with life. So understanding that and understanding that life continues to move on has allowed me to say, you know what, like I literally can't. I like when you start to get that understanding, you start to feel the connection with you in your life, with you and the universe as a whole. And so when you're doing I'm sorry, my son just came in and
No
got me a
problem,
little
no
distracted.
problem.
But when you start to have that awareness, you start to feel that connection with life, and you start to not even feel resistance to go with life. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that really helped me to move on, not necessarily the part of forgiveness, but to keep moving on, moving forward with life. And I call it not necessarily moving with the flow, because if you're moving with the flow, the way I think of it is you're just going and you're not necessarily picking what you want to do, you're not taking decisions, you're just moving along with it. So what I call it is working with the flow. You see what life, where life is going, and you see where you can do things, where you can work, how you can do the things with the circumstances that life has put in this present moment. How can you work with that? And that's what that gives me. But with forgiving myself, um I think that happened over time. It's not a thing that happens like that. Like you just say you're gonna forgive yourself and that's that, you know. I think the real forgiveness comes with your growth when you realize that you have actually become a better person, you know, and that happens over time. So if anything, I would say like just whatever it is that you started to work on, even if it's the slightest thing that you started to work on yourself, grab that snowball and roll it and just keep going along with your growth, and that's going to give you the ultimate forgiveness of yourself.